Wow, no pressure.
I know. I'm like, oh my gosh, here we go. But yeah, so yeah, I'm stoked. So I signed the contract last week. And yeah, so I'm gonna have you guys back on the show. I was telling Bridget, there's so much information. The people on my show have been so powerful that now I want to come back and do like one-on-one with them because there's so much information and I want to dive a little bit deeper, with conversations and leaning into the heart, the whole thing. And I just really want us to, while we do this, just don't think, just go with your heart, just follow through with your heart. And it's going to be lovely.
Awesome. You guys look beautiful. You look so beautiful.
So do you.
I was thinking the same thing. And we're now live on Facebook too.
We're now live on Facebook. Yeah. I just put us live on Facebook.
Will call in. That will be fantastic.
I know, right?
I posted it on a few pages. So
perfect.
Hi, Karen. How you doing? Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Doing good. All right. So I think everybody was sounding pretty good, but we'll do some sound checks. Karen, go ahead and count back from 5 for me.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
All right. Sounds good. And Bridget?
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
All right. And Allicia?
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Okay, good. All right. So Bridget, are you just using the internal mic on your computer?
I am.
Okay. It doesn't sound bad. We can hear you okay. I'm just going to have you turn up the volume just a little bit. If you want to follow along with me, if you go down to the bottom left corner of the Zoom window, you'll see the little microphone mute button. And right next to that, there's this little arrow. Click right on that arrow.
Okay.
All right. And at the bottom of that window, click on audio settings.
Okay.
All right. And then in the audio settings, the microphone section is in the middle there. Below, right below where it says test mic, you'll see a little tab that says automatically adjust microphone volume. Make sure that's not selected.
Okay.
And then just above that is the volume slide bar. Where would you say percentage-wise it is right now?
I would say it's at 80%.
80? Okay, maybe move it back up to about maybe 85-ish. So just a little bit.
How's that?
All right, count back from 5 for me one more time.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
All right, yep, that's perfect. Excellent, thank you. Go ahead and close that window.
Okay.
All right, so everybody sounded good. We are good to go. Karen, I will get you started here. We'll get going in about 30 seconds.
Hey, thank you. Yay! Whew. Right? Just keep breathing.
Big breath.
You got your baby too, Bridget.
I know. And grandbabies.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, they were going to be in Idaho today, but Grandpa has shingles. And so what we're doing now is just playing it by ear because the baby hasn't had chickenpox vaccination yet. So.
Oh, so their grandpa in Idaho has shingles.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant grandpa at your house had shingles. I'm like, oh
no. Nope, not that grandpa. But anyway, so if I mute, that's going to be the only reason why. And Karen, I'm so excited and delighted for you.
Me too. I'm so just privileged having you guys on this.
No, thank you. It's an honor to be here. Thanks for.
All right. Well, it is showtime. I'm going to send the feed your way. Have a good show.
Thank you.
It's time to start your life the way it is meant to be. There's only one time when it will be too late, and you don't want to wait for that. This is Now or Never. The choice is yours. Your host is Karen Wright. Today, you're about to meet some amazing people. The stories are not always happy ones, but they define a healing process. Listen with an open mind and an open heart. Now, here is Karen Wright.
Welcome, listeners. You have tuned in to Now or Never. The choice is yours. And thank you for making the choice and being with us now in the present. I appreciate it so much. Today's listener, we have a wonderful show for you. 2 inspiring guests, Bridget Cook-Burch and Allicia Niles. So welcome both of you for being here today.
Oh, so excited and delighted, Karen. This is fantastic.
Good to be here. Thank you.
Allicia, I'm so excited for you. So today's theme is called Live in your inspired story. So listeners, as we begin, June is the beginning of summer, a time for embracing with family and friends, taking vacations, planning adventures, and allowing memories to unfold. Laughter and love of life allow the world to look different. Today, my guests, Bridget and Allicia, will be speaking about transformation in your story, a time to surge forward into the next inspiring chapters as your life unfolds, no matter what chapters have gone before. Listeners, you know, as we begin my show that I always like to ground. So let's take the opportunity right now and close your eyes, taking a deep breath in and releasing. Another deep breath in and releasing. Now bring your hands up around your shoulders like you're giving yourself a big hug. And as you're taking those deep breaths, I want you to either say to yourself or out loud, I am worthy of my love. Let's say that 3 times. I am worthy of my love. I am worthy of my love. I am worthy of my love. Take another deep breath in and releasing. And then taking your finger and tapping 3 times on your chest, repeating the words accept. Accept, accept, accept. Another deep breath in and releasing. Listeners, I hope you feel that grounding, feel that connection with earth, with the heavens, and being present and being in the now. Each show we have an affirmation, and as my listeners know, I never look at the card. I shuffle up the card and pop whatever pops out as affirmation for the day. And I invite my guests to lean in and to share with the listeners what you felt or what you thought of when I read this affirmation to you. You ready for this? Oh, I am joy.
I like that.
Of course.
I am joy. Bridget, what do you think about that one?
Oh, that is a lovely one. I was talking with some authors last night on as I was teaching, and one of them talked about a hummingbird being on this dry, dusty desert trail, and suddenly there was this beautiful hummingbird. And I remembered that the Native Americans, to them, that was a sign of joy, of drinking of the nectar of life, of as just exactly what you said, the heavens and the earth together. And so just excites me that that's our theme for the day. I am joy.
I am joy.
I think we have that choice, just like you were saying, now or never. We always think, I'm going to be joyful or happy in the future. And we have the choice to be joyful right now.
I love that. Thank you. Allicia, what about you?
First thing that came to my mind was when I was a little kid, just like just how easy it can be to want to suppress that, but also have that just like bubbling under the surface so much that you just, finding the ability to be able to let that release, to be able to allow yourself to be happy. And that's something that I think a lot of us have in us, but at the same time, it's easy to get to suppress that. And I think just being able to embrace that and remember that, and just know that our roots are like our deep roots. They really do want to be happy and be that little kid and just experience joy. So
I appreciate that so much, because I think oftentimes we get caught up in the world and daily routines, and it's so hard. We don't allow that little child inside of us to come forward. We suppress it, and life is too short not to be joyful. So listeners, think about that. I am joy. Write that affirmation down, put it on your sticky note, put it on your mirror like I do with all my affirmations. And remember to allow that nectar of life, the little hummingbirds, the simple things that add joy, that childlike inside of you. Allow them to come forward and enjoy life. I love this one. I'm so happy that was pulled today. Because I am very joyful that I have Bridget and Allicia, both dear friends of mine, on today, and very powerful women. I want to introduce Bridget to our listeners. Bridget Cook-Burch is a New York Times and Wall Street Journal best-selling author, mentor, and speaker, known for her riveting stories of transformation. As the founder of Your Inspired Story, her powerful work has been showcased on Oprah, CNN, GMA, Dateline, the History Channel, NPR, and in People, among many others. As the founder of Your Inspired Story, she is a leader, storyteller, trainer, and humanitarian. Her greatest passion is helping others to discover the importance of their own story and to become leaders in their own communities and worldwide. Bridget's many national bestsellers include The Witness Wore Red. And I'm not going to read about it because I want you to tell our listeners about it, because I love listening it from you, if that's okay.
That's perfect.
Bridget is a wonderful woman. She is a wife and a mother of 3 lovely kids and a wonderful husband. 4. I got one.
She's got Bailey.
No. And a puppy. She has a dog too. A German Shepherd.
And 2 grandkids.
And 2 grandkids. Oh my gosh, she is just amazing, amazing. So Bridget, welcome to the show. I'm so excited. So tell us about The Witness Wore Red, what that book is about.
That has been one of my favorites to write, even though it was very difficult. It was about the 19th wife of 65 women. She was born into a polygamous cult and was essentially sold to the prophet so that her father could have more power in the church. And she became the prophet's wife. She had never even kissed a boy. And at age 19, she was given to the prophet, who was more than 4 times her age. And she was married to him for a time. He was very old. And as I mentioned, and then he died, and his son Warren took over the FLDS. And Warren, you probably have heard of Warren Jeffs. So Warren is now behind bars for life plus 20 years. And The Witness Wore Red is all about Rebecca's personal story of what it took for her to come from this place of believing that everything she was told by the prophets were true and real and something that she had to live by, to finding her own inner truth and recognizing that there were unhealthy things that were happening to 12 and 13 and 14-year-old girls that she would no longer stand for. And she became the face of the faceless and the voice of the voiceless in the courtroom. And it's just an extraordinary story of a woman of courage, and just shows, like with you, Karen, and you, Allicia, what one person can do to change the world. So I am still constantly inspired by her.
Yeah, I remember I read the book, and I'm going to get emotional here, but it was hard for me to read it, that things like that happen today. And you have also written a couple you write these books that are like not easy to write or to read. And we're going to share, you and Allicia are working on Allicia's story. And later in the show, listeners, we're going to be talking to them about this book that I've had the privilege to read the first draft as a beta reader. And I was just so inspired. But we're not going to say what the name of the book is yet, because we want listeners to stay in. We're going to keep them on the edge. We're going
to own her glory. Absolutely.
Yeah, we're going to dangle the little carrot to keep people going.
Well, I wanted to mention something, if that's okay, really quickly about The Witness Wore Red. I've got 2 friends I have several that read it because I gave it to them for gifts and things like that. And one of them, Diana Piper, I remember she was reading it, and she was on your show before. And I remember we were neighbors, and she texted me late at night, and she's like, do you hear that siren? It's making me mad. It's making me put this book down, and I don't want to. And my other friend, the same thing. She's just like, I had to go to the bathroom and I had to put my book down. So they were mad because they were that into it. So anyway, I thought it was kind of funny.
It is. It's amazing. So Bridget, how did you get going? How did you start doing the work that you're doing? How did you become the author and the writer and the teacher? Like, you're a jack of all trades, and I love it.
Well, the teaching came second, but the learning came first. And I think that happens for a lot of people, right? I had to first be on a journey where I discovered the power of story. And one of the biggest things that happened to me was I had a near-death experience in my early 20s, and it rocked my world. I almost died. I was given a second chance at life. And when I left the hospital, I saw humanity in such a different way than I ever had before. I had this gift of being able to see the world. It was, and just look into anyone's eyes and to be able to see love there, just because of this divine experience I had. So I had the opportunity, I was young married, had the opportunity to work with young at-risk youth in Denver. And I saw how their stories were influencing everyday life decisions, you know, and they thought that they did not have choices, and it was because of the stories they lived in. And when they would change their story, when something would influence that, then I would watch their lives take off in these remarkable ways. And it just enthralled me. And I kept seeing this power of story. So I wrote about a former skinhead who changed his life and then began to teach kids to stay out of gangs. And then I also wrote about the daughter of a serial killer and how she overcame that box of beliefs and the stories that she came from to claim an extraordinary life. Now she's a producer in LA and is doing amazing things. So I just, I firsthand saw it in myself and then witnessed it in other people. So I absolutely love that.
How do you create like the work-life balance and your personal joy?
That's a great question, especially with joy being paramount. I honestly have to be careful because I can be a workaholic. Stories are important to me. Writing is important to me. Helping other people with their stories is important to me. And family is important to me. So I have these juxtapositions, right? And so I constantly have to watch, but I have reminders of joy all around me. Have a hummingbird feeder right out my window. Have, you know, make sure that I'm scheduling time with family and with the things that bring me joy. And I'm doing what I love. So it's easier to balance. I think some people who hate what they do in as far as work, it can be a really difficult thing. I'm surrounded by joy on a daily basis. I just have to, the work-life balance can sometimes be a little challenging at times.
Yeah. And I think that's balancing, I think it's an act. I mean, you really have to pay attention to the balancing and stuff. But Bridget helped me with my book, Now or Never, Shine Baby Shine. And she was my mentor and my coach and my teacher. And she taught me so much. But I know how needy I am. And all of it, I'm like, Bridget, what about this? What about this? I'm like, and if you have like 20 of us, 50 of us that you're working with, I am so sorry.
You are so cute, Karen. We do get needy in our stories, but that's a normal, natural thing. And I feel like the gifts that I was given in life are able to help me to be patient with other people. And I really love to see, you talked about transformation, the transformation that happens when people dig and dive deeply into their own story, their own past, their own reasons for believing the things that they have believed about themselves, because then they can transform. And so thank you for the apology, but it's not needed. It's such an honor to work with authors and people on their books and stories.
Well, and it was, I appreciate the fact that you shared with the listeners that you did have a near death experience, because to me, near death, that's a form of loss in a certain way. Like you saw the other side, and you made the choice of coming back, and you put aside, that loss of being able to cross over to the other side on hold, and you found your gifts. And I think I would love you to share with the listeners, maybe a little bit about what you went through, or what your thoughts were when you did step back into this life.
I would be happy to share that with you. It was a little bit difficult because when I had that near death, I was surrounded by unconditional love. Like I'd grown up adopted, and my adoptive parents were amazing, phenomenal people. So I had felt loved from the first day in their arms. When I was 6 months old, I had felt that love. This unconditional love, though, is so extraordinary that it vibrated in every cell of my being, and it completely changed my way of looking at life and the world and everything else. But it was difficult to go from that place of such peace and love and acceptance. Like that unconditional love didn't care all the mistakes I made, didn't care how much debt I was in as a student, didn't care, all about the things that I thought were so important, just loved me for me. And to walk back into the world of, I don't know if I'm going to pass my test tomorrow in college. And, I don't know if I'm going to be able to keep this job, and all of the things that young people face. That's where I was at. And it was a struggle. But I do also want to share that it was such an extraordinary gift, because I also saw what was possible for me, and for me to be able to share with other people. So for me, I think that's why I have been able to work with high risk youth and, cultists and skinheads and family of serial killers, and, Allicia's extraordinary story and where she comes from and what she was able to do with her life. I think that deep, abiding love gifted me to be able to see more with those eyes. Like I would never claim to be heaven-like, but I do like to bring as much heaven here as I possibly can, if that makes sense.
Yes, no, it totally makes sense. Listeners, we have been speaking with Bridget and her amazing journey, her near-death experience, and how that's transformed her, being able to see the true character, the true love, the unconditional love for every walk of life, and the importance of humanity. And she brings joy to everyone. She walks into the room, she lights it up. We will be right back after this break.
Okay, great job. We're all clear. Back in a couple minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. My door accidentally opened, so you're hearing chatter. I'm gonna.
Oh, okay.
I didn't realize it was going so fast. I shouldn't have broken in.
No. What we'll come back and I'll recap with Bridget just for a second.
Okay.
I'm going to ask her one more question, and then I'll introduce you.
Okay.
And then we'll go into the first part of the show is a little bit shorter, but I will ask Bridget a couple more questions.
Good.
And then we'll
Okay.
introduce you and then come in together. How's that?
Sounds good.
Bridget, I kind of just I appreciate you speaking about that, because I think that's really important for people to hear, with trauma and things like that. That's like our turning point in so many ways in life. And I love when you share it, because you have so many gifts. So I call them your celestial gifts.
It's true.
Well, and isn't it wonderful when we see everybody has them,
Yeah.
And so how do we make the best use of those? It's fantastic. I think that's part of what you're doing here, is being able to let people shine and share those amazing gifts that they have. So this is quite an honor.
You're very good at that. shouting
they're
people out, making people feel good. So
I don't do anything. It's like, what about Bob? I just let the boat do all the work when he's sailing. I sailed. You said, I just let the boat do the work.
That
That's
sounds
awesome.
like you. And it teaches the rest of us not to take everything so freaking seriously.
Oh my heck. It's been, life is too short. That's for sure. And yeah, just
Coming back in
okay.
about 15 seconds.
Okay, thank you. Anyway, back behind the scenes are the best.
Because we're on Facebook Live.
And everybody on Facebook can see what happens behind the scenes.
You are listening to Now or Never. The choice is yours. To connect with the program today, please call us at 1-888-346-9141. That's 1-888-346-9141. If you'd rather send an email, the address is Karen@shinenowornever.com. Let's get back to this week's show. Here again is Karen Wright.
Welcome back, listeners. We've had the privilege of speaking with Bridget Cook, a mentor, a teacher, an author, my friend. And she was just speaking to us a little bit about her near-death experience before we went into break. And during the break, we were talking about, how trauma and things like that kind of open our eyes a little bit. And you look at life differently, and you understand that this moment might be the only moment that we have, and to make the most out of it. And our affirmation, I am joy, goes hand in hand with all of this. And there's I wanted to ask Bridget a couple more things, because she is so talented, and she does retreats, and she's a speaker. I mean, that's how I met Bridget. Was she actually was a speaker at our YCC for the Battered Women's Shelter Gala in 2019, I think 2018, and she was talking about the stories, and that we all have a story we can write and all this stuff. And I went up to her afterwards. I'm like, Bridget, you can write my story. And she goes, no, you can write your story. And I was like, I don't even journal. I don't even write. And she's like, you can do it. And the relationship began. And so maybe I would love the listeners for you to explain your retreats and what you do, and teaching in the year program, because you have a lot to offer for people if they're interested.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. As I mentioned, I wasn't expecting this, because we were going to talk about other things, but I do love for people to have a safe place to explore their own stories. And so I developed what's called the Inspired Writers Retreat. And it's a place where we get away in the mountains for 3.5 days. It happens just a few times a year, but it is wonderful. We're in a private little secluded cabin. We have chefs, as you know, that cater to our every needs, and they take care of what we need as far as the food, so we can dive deeply into each of our books. And there's a lot of intensive instruction and a lot of group interaction, because sometimes, working on your book can be a solitary experience. And so it's really wonderful to be surrounded by authors in a small group, be able to have your voice be heard and your story witnessed. And so that's one of my favorite things. And then I also have moving from that into a 12-week program, or even a full year program, especially for someone like Karen, who said, I'm ready. I'm ready to own my voice. I'm ready to be a leader. I'm ready to have my story be heard and to help other people. And those are the most delicious authors that I love to work with, when they've experienced, as you talked about, these turning points, these major turning points in their lives. And they're like, I want to use this for good now. I want this to be something that I can share and help transform others. And that's why people like Karen and Allicia and others, it's just a joy to be able to work with, because you're not stuck in victim mode. You have moved way beyond that into wanting to use your story for good, as a victor, as a leader. And so at yourinspiredstory.com. You can find out more information or find me on Facebook at Bridget Cook. And I would absolutely love to hear about you, hear about your book, hear about your stories, what you're thinking of. I hope people who are just barely getting started, all the way through to those who say, you know, I've written my book, I'm not really proud of it, I want it to be better. Can you please help me to have a juicier read that somebody can't put down and is going to affect someone halfway around the world? I'm like, yes, that's my. So I love that.
And I love the word juicy. Bridget's always talking juicy stuff. And you say that and it makes me smile because it is. And there's one thing about when I was writing my book that I asked my writing angels to help me with, you know, and Kalina, my daughter, because the book's about her and stuff. But I said, I always would ask, please let people feel my words. I want them to feel it. And if the words aren't juicy, and Bridget knows my limited vocabulary, she'll say things sometimes I'm like, what does that mean?
But the cool thing about it is you will always ask and then you look it up and then you're like, I really love that word. I'm going to use that word now.
I know, it's juicy. I love it. Oh, Bridget, thank you so much. We're going to, after our next break, come back. And so don't go away. You're staying here with me.
I will stay here with you.
Okay. I want to take the time and introduce Allicia Johnson Niles. She is an author and speaker with a profound message of hope. From childhood, her entire life was affected by her father's murder while he was serving in the U.S. Navy. Deep-rooted grief and curiosity caused her to seek the truth behind the conspiracies abroad, the USS Richard S. Edwards, and her father's death. Suddenly, she felt an intense connection with her father on almost a daily basis. Now, as she goes on through her life, Allicia continues to learn and grow. Her understanding, heart, quick sense of humor, and unconquerable determination has opened doors and created life-changing connections that continue to be a blessing. She is newly married. And I'm so excited to have you here, Allicia. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting me. It's an honor. Honestly, I was just like, what? So thank you.
So in the bio, there's a lot about your book, and I didn't read it. I kind of skimmed over it because I want to hear from you, just like with Bridget about the Witness War Red. So tell the listeners your story. Like you have a story and a journey and passion that when I read the book, I was blown I was blown away. I get blown away reading books sometimes. And I'm like, what the heck? And I'm reading yours, and it was such an honor to, be a beta reader for it. So tell our listeners a little bit about your life story and what you've been through.
Oh goodness, it's kind of funny. One reason I connected with Bridget when I first started writing is I'm like, I've been living this. I don't know what pieces go where, but in a nutshell, the biggest thing I can say is, Bridget had her near-death experience. I had this push that I couldn't stop. It's like, I kind of think if you guys have seen the movie Frozen 2, where Elsa is drawn and she hears this voice, and it sounds almost kind of like, who are you, weirdo? But no, it's like I just felt this draw, and like there's thought in the back of my mind that would not let me stop. First of all, I grew up afraid of everything. I mean, it's funny because I've got a really powerful memory of being a toddler and thinking the worst, my mom would leave and I'd hold my breath till she'd come home. So I lived in terror. And so my book basically goes from here I was this child who was afraid of everything, growing up into an adult who was afraid of everything. It's something that has stuck. But at the same time, having this drive and this push. And again, I started to recognize it as my dad's voice, as, kind of showing me a little bit more of who I was, and also that he needed me to do something. And it didn't come overnight. It wasn't this huge message or anything like that. But as I started to listen to those feelings and acting on them, I'd see miracles happen. And from the time I was a teeny kid, it's like if there was something that needed to be done that I wanted, I was going to do it. My spirit animal is a pit bull. I'm not kidding. And that is how I've been throughout this whole thing, throughout this process. I mean, being afraid of my own shadow, but at the same time, if it's got to be done, it's got to be done. So it went from me being terrified and finally facing my biggest fears. I always felt this distrust for the US Navy. And I was always a little bit afraid of a killer coming out to kill us. I didn't know about if my dad's killer. It was almost kind of a subconscious fear that he was loose. But realistically, of course, the Navy would have taken care of him. And then I found out when I was working with Bridget, he was. And it's just, the book goes into, I'm not going to go into too many details, but it goes into how Bridget and I together faced this killer who had the wherewithal, he could have gone anywhere whenever he wanted to, and also faced the Navy and called them out on what they did wrong. And the absolute, like, you know, going back to the whole Elsa thing, it's like she felt driven and she didn't know why. I didn't know. And I had people telling me, you've got to stop. What are you doing? And it's not like I was kind of going crazy, but at the same time, until I had my answers, until I had my resolution, something would not let me stop. And when it finally did, it was the most peaceful. I felt like my dad was just like, thank you. This is what I needed to have done. And anyway.
Well, and that's really powerful when you feel that urge and you know it's not from you. It's a higher power or something telling you, keep moving. You've got to do this. You got to do this. If you could go back and relive your childhood, what would you do to change it? Like, how would you see it differently? If you could decide.
I might get emotional. I'm kind of emotional right now, but I grew up thinking my own thoughts. I have a wonderful family, but believing that because God took my dad, I wasn't worth anything. And I believed that. And I'd go back to that couch potato, eating all the leftovers and gaining weight and hating herself. And I'd get her playing sports. I'd get her dancing. I'd get her to do the things that she wanted to do. That's what I would change, is getting her to live instead of being an insecure, living in the TV shadow. Basically, that's what I would do. So
I appreciate you sharing that, because I think most people look back and think, I would do things a little bit differently. And what I love about you, Allicia, is that you're no longer afraid. You found that courage and you've allowed that little girl to step forward now. And you have created your happily ever after with what you're doing in life, and you found the man of your dreams. Tell me about this.
Oh my gosh, it's been crazy. I will own my age. I'm 47 years old. And it's funny because it's like, you know, you mentioned fear and overcoming fear. My tagline is unlikely courage. And one thing about courage, and I was thinking about it this morning as I was walking around, is who is it that says it's not the absence of being in fear? It's the going forward despite it or something like that. It's like you've got that fear and you still do it. And so that is one thing that I would like to share with the listeners is, you know, it's having that courage doesn't mean you're fixed. It doesn't mean you're done. It means that you know how to do it. And being married, like I spent my whole life wanting to be worthy of somebody's love and wanting to be worthy, you know, and you go to those cliches, until you can love yourself, you can't be loved. I kind of don't like that. I kind of think that I don't know, it's kind of a double-sided little bit of a slap in the face, but it's just, I spent my life working to be worthy and then thinking, oh, you know, once I achieve this, then I've made it and it's going to be smooth sailing. And there are times when it's tempting to kind of slip back into some of those habits and realize that, you know what, no, this is who I am. And to remember that the divine, the solid, the tenacious, the happy, the joyous person is still there. And there's also opposition trying to push her down. And that exists even though I found the man of my dreams and he is wonderful. I mean, yes, let me choose the best year ever to get married and move across the country. When I am afraid of my own shadow, I have to take a Xanax to fly sometimes still. But, you know, I learned from a doctor that that's normal. It's okay. So, I mean, I want the listeners who are afraid and have some anxiety to know it's okay. You just got to not stop your life for that. But anyway, coming out here and just knowing that, I think part of the unlikely courage is having the unlikely courage to know that those things, those triggers are still there, and that it's not, you can't stop working, I think.
Right.
So.
And courage, to me, I mean, fear is all around us every day, right? And that, I think, can motivate many people to find the courage to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
Fear can be, to me, kind of a good thing, right? Just like what you said. Yeah. Because you're learning to overcome, and you've done so much in the last couple of years. I mean, it blows me away. And to hear, because I didn't really know that about you. I would never have pictured that you had fear or things like that, because you're just a solid person to me in my eyes. And I love that. And you're courageous, and everything that you've been through has been amazing. Do you ever feel like your father's with you? What is that connection with your father?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's, I didn't realize I was grieving when I was a little kid. I pushed it away. Society, we've got some norms that Bridget and I push against like crazy in the book, where it's just kind of like, you were too young and things like that. And he would come up in very, very unmistakable ways. And there it shows up in the book that we're going to share some things like that. But it's, I have dreams sometimes, but mostly it's just thoughts like out of the blue, not my language. Like I told my mom as I got a little bit older, it's like, I had this thought and it was this, and this. And she's like, that's how your dad talks. Another thing he uses is music. His favorite hymn was The Morning Breaks. And that would show up like one day, literally 3 times in a row at church. Like I worked at different churches in the same building, but still, like, he's very noisy. And, or else just thoughts out of nowhere. Like the chapter on my website, it's Weghorst hasn't handled it well. There was a man named Weghorst, and I had that thought, and I reached out to him, and sure enough, he was retired for mental illness because of my dad's death. So,
wow. Listeners, we've been speaking with Allicia and her journey, her father's death. And when we come back, we are going to dive deeper into the book that her and Bridget have been writing and exploring and learning, and some of their stories and encounters that they've had. We'll be right back after this break.
All right, good segment. All clear. Back in about 2.
Okay, thank you. Good job, Allicia.
thank you. Winging it.
That was good. A lot of times, like when I read through your questions and when we're talking, something will spur me. So I wanted, sorry if I went personal about you getting married and all that, but I think this is celebration. We're celebrating.
Yeah. I appreciate it. Well, and I feel like it's something that's important too. It's just, as I'm learning what it's like and the ups and downs. I mean, the ups are he's wonderful and treats me so well. The downs are this double chin and seeing the screen. That it's been something that I've struggled with, and things like that, where it's just kind of like, I don't mean like, oh, you're going back into it, because I'm not that same person, but still it's like, wait a minute, those cute clothes that I bought are supposed to fit.
And they will.
I think there's a lot of people saying that after COVID.
Yeah, that's true. The COVID-19.
Crazy.
But not trying to make it about that, but just kind of the, and slipping back into being terrified that he's going to die on me or I'm going to die on him. So.
Yeah. And that can be,
very tricky.
Those thought processes, but you're aware of them and and you can separate them now and go, no, that's not my life anymore, because you're aware of them. And I think that's the beauty of it. And, you made that comment about, loving yourself or whatever. And I totally have always told my kids, you have to love yourself first before you can be in a relationship.
And I think there's some truth. I feel bad that I said that, but it just always drove me crazy. But I did have to go to therapy and be like, you know what, I'm cool. I'm worth it. I did have to come to that conclusion.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. To me, you continue to love yourself because you continue to evolve.
Mhm.
And there's some things you love about yourself, and there's some things you don't like about yourself.
Mhm. Yeah, it's true.
And
Okay, coming
so,
back in 10 seconds.
okay, thanks.
You are listening to Now or Never. The choice is yours. To connect with the program today, please call us at 1-888-346-9141. That's 1-888-346-9141. If you'd rather send an email, the address is Karen@shinenowornever.com. Let's get back to this week's show. Here again is Karen Wright.
Listeners, welcome back. I hope you found some joy in listening to our guest today. We've been speaking with Allicia right before break, and her journey as a child and losing her father and her connection with her dad still to this day and her life. And I'm going to bring Bridget back and Allicia back because we're moving on to this next segment about Allicia's book. And so, Allicia, I would love you, first of all, I want each of you to share, so I don't forget, your contact information, how the listeners can get a hold of you, to ask questions, to email you, anything like that, whatever you feel comfortable in sharing. I ask you to do that. So Bridget, could you share with everyone?
Yeah, thank you. My website is yourinspiredstory.com, and there's contact information on there, or you can just simply email me, Bridget, Bridget, at yourinspiredstory.com. That's probably the easiest way to get in touch with me, but you're welcome to find me on Facebook or Instagram. Super happy to talk with you.
Okay, and then Allicia, what about for you?
Okay, so Allicia.Niles, only my last name. My Gmail is Allicia. It's 2 L's in there. My husband's cousin is Allicia Niles with 1 L. Actually, she's married, so it's different.
Wow.
But but it's Allicia, ALLICIA.Niles@gmail. And also, drumroll, here's the title of our book, angelinarlington.com. So I've got my website up there. Bridget and I came up with that title together, driving home from one of her retreats, and it was.
I love that name, Angels in Arlington. So tell, there's a point you mentioned earlier, Allicia, where you were scared for your life, not knowing where, like, first of all, what happened to your dad. So the whole story was kind of explain, nutshell, this kind of storyline without giving too much detail, because we don't want to give it away to the listeners, but we want to entice them.
Right. So, well, my book, Bridget and I have been working on it to make it something a little bit universal. There's an element of true crime, which my dad's death was covered up. We found out grossly. My dad's killer was on the loose. We found that out, and that's kind of towards the middle where we find these things out, but it starts out, and then it's also spiritual. So we've got the spiritual, we've got the true crime, and we also have the strength and the overcoming and coming to justice. There's several different facets in the book. And, the core of me, basically in the book, it talks about, here I am as a woman who, I started researching my dad's death when I was 30, and it was just nudge after nudge after nudge. And I hated my past. I was terrified of my future, and I felt stuck where I was. And I feel like there are a lot of people who are there. And what this book does is it goes through, and it's very raw and real about the past, about the present, about what it takes to move forward. And it was like, there was this big solid iron wall. There were several. There was my dad's killer, there was the Navy, and there was the fact that the Navy called my dad's death an accident when they told my family it was murder, and overcoming that. So.
And that's huge. Before the show, my son's like, hey, so who's on your show today? And so I was telling him, I'm like, and Alicia's running this book, and her father was murdered on a Navy ship, and they covered up. And it's kind of like, they have to walk kind of lightly, because this is the Navy you're talking about.
It's the Navy back then. Oh, go ahead.
Okay, yeah. No, explain that.
It's the Navy back then. One thing I want to, and we've worked to make this clear in the book, is I love and respect our military.
Mhm.
I understand that back then, and this is something that I had to come to peace to on my own. Was it okay that I covered it up? Probably not. Did they feel it necessary? You know, there's a fine line between honoring and respecting them, and then over 40 years later going, okay, can the family please have some peace? And so that's one thing I want to make sure that comes across is, yes, I know that there are reasons, because sometimes other lives can be lost, you know, if there are things that need to be kept quiet. And so I definitely want to convey my love and respect for the Navy, but at the same time, you know, people can reach out to their congressman like we did. Congressman Chris Stewart was wonderful. There are resources out there, and that's one thing that we discovered, is that there are people who want to help. So,
and I love that, because I think so often people don't respect where we live in this country of freedom, and what men and women have done to fight for it, for us.
mm-hmm.
And I agree with you when you said, you know, sometimes things are covered up. Maybe we don't understand them,
mm-hmm.
because we were in the situation, or more lives could have been jeopardized, or this and that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know things happen to protect maybe more people, but I also believe that, you know, it is integrity to be able to come forward and say, yes, this happened. And
mm-hmm.
you had that help. And I know there's a little story of kind of meeting the murderer.
That's Bridget.
Okay, Bridget, you're on.
Well, it was fascinating because, you know, we had some naval records that were given to her mom, and then Allicia was trying to get more records, and the Navy was refusing to give them to her. And so we were left with a lot more questions than we had answers. And to find out that, you know, Smiley's still alive, and that he's living in this place back east, and is free on his, you know, on his own recognizance, and we recognize that at some point he had, he had escaped the U.S. Navy, and so we didn't know what we were going to find, and we didn't know if he was on drugs or if he was mentally had issues, because it seemed apparent from some of the stories and also from the records that this was happening, but we just didn't know for sure. So it was a dangerous thing for, you know, this man who had murdered her father to meet Allicia, and Allicia had hired some amazing former military men who were working as private investigators, and they were like, we just don't feel good about you coming out there. And I'm like, oh, cool. And I've dealt with skinheads and serial killers and other things, and this is one thing that I do know, is that there is a human element to all of this, no matter what circumstances we ever come across. But I did have, Allicia knows this, I did have like this cover story we were going to give to her father's killer and everything else, and when I knocked on his doorstep and he answered the door, it all went away. And I just told him the truth, and I said, look, I know what happened to some degree on the USS Richard S. Edwards in 1976, and I don't think you've ever been given the opportunity to tell your side of the story. Would you be willing to do this? And I was terrified. We had a getaway car, you know, and I had a one of the gentlemen beside me who was my friend, you know, and they were on high alert. But eventually he did agree, and we met in a hotel after a lot of rigmarole, and I interviewed him for 7.5 hours. And I remember just the emotions inside of me of, you know, this man is responsible for a 40-year legacy of fear in the entire Johnson family. And to finally know some of that truth and be able to speak to Allicia, who was waiting like this on bated breath, you know,
so terrifying.
And, you know, and we're in the hotel room and we have someone right next door and I'm in with my bodyguard and everything, but you know, she's waiting to hear what's going to happen. And it was intense. It was very intense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it sounds like I remember when you shared that story at one of the retreats, and I'm like going, you did what? But I also love the fact that you saw the human, you saw him as a person, and getting his side of the story and allowing that to step forward, because I'm sure that's that weightness or pain he felt all those years for doing. There's so many things that, you know, we do that we regret, you know, as we get older, and being able to step into that and own it. And, you know, I think, Allicia, you gave him a beautiful gift of being able to forgive.
It took a long time. It did take a long time.
Yeah.
But it came. So over time, it took a few years after, actually, for me to fully be able to feel that. But I did want his help. I did see him as a human, where before he was a monster.
Yeah. Where I think that's beautiful. And, you know, I believe that people are put into each other's lives, and you and Bridget getting together and allowing your story to unfold and allowing the research and Bridget's support and you guys doing this together, you're going to touch thousands of lives with your book. And it just, I'm excited for it. Do we have like a launch date? Do we have when the book's coming forward yet? Can we share any of that? I don't know.
Looking at me, so Bridget.
I do have one thought I wanted to share after this briefly, but
no, go for it, please.
Well, the biggest thing, the biggest reward, well, one of the biggest rewards, there have been several, and they've been unexpected, but the biggest thing is there's people like Bridget Scott, an author that she's working with, and I'm probably going to cry when I say this, but she's not the only one who's come to me and said, because you did this, I can too. And there's one girl who her story would, oh my gosh, I can't wait for her book to come out. But she's hired the same private investigator I did. But I've had several people say, you did this, so I can too. And it invites people to share their stories. So,
well, I appreciate
to have that unlikely courage that you found too, Allicia, because as you mentioned, being terrified your entire life, and then to have to face a killer and the U.S. Navy, and for people to, you know, read about it and understand about it, and to see, oh, this is how I can do this. It's extraordinary. You've been such a light to so many.
Listeners, we have been just blessed today with Bridget and Allicia, both with us. And I never got a launch date, did I?
Bridget, you answer.
I'm teasing.
Bridget, you say whatever you want.
We don't have an exact launch date, but we recognize that the book could be stronger and better. And so we're in the middle of a final rewrite, and it already is so much better. Like, Karen, when you read it, you're going to be like, oh, I can't believe this is the same book, but it's the same story and so worth it. Oh my goodness, yes.
Yes, we're at the end of it. It feels like it, and we are shooting for the top.
Good.
This needs to get out there. So
well, if I know you too, it will be the top. It will be #1 bestseller, New York bestseller, the whole thing. People are going to go crazy. I'll be like, oh, I knew her when.
Coming from a best-selling author. Thank you, Karen, you. So
yeah.
Listeners, thank you for sharing and being with us today. And remember our affirmation for the week. I am joy. The breath is a gift of life. Choose now and live. Remember, the world is not for sissies. We're here to experience our own story as we each walk our personal journeys. Have an amazing day, and thank you for choosing to be here now. Until next week, sending you all love and light.
All right, great job today. Good show. We're all clear.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.